Welcome to Growth Equity Group. My name is Mike Decker, and I'm one of the vice presidents here at Growth Equity Group. And I'm going to be giving today's presentation on how to diversify your portfolio, specifically in your retirement account. Today on the presentation, we're going to be talking a lot about IRAs and self-directed IRAs. We're going to be talking about real estate, and we're going to try and see if we can figure out a way to combine those together and make it make sense for you. But before I begin, the first thing I want to talk about is actually a story of one of our clients. You can see on the presentation here the story of George, but George is actually not his real name, but this is a real story about one of our clients. So George had roughly $400,000 that he had all in stocks. And I won't mention names, but that stock happened to be all in oil. And coincidentally, about 1 month after he decided to roll over that $400,000 in oil stock over into real estate, that stock plummeted about 25%. So George's portfolio would have taken a $100,000 hit had he kept his money in the stock market. George was smart, saw that there was a correction coming in the market, and decided to make a change into something more stable. So it really worked out for George. But let's just assume that George's money would not have taken a hit and take a look at what it would look like if he kept the money in stocks versus rolling that over. So, like I said, George was in stocks, and he had it inside of a Fidelity account, which was earning at that time actually only about a 6% return over the last 10 years. In other words, $24,000 per year on $400,000. Now, after he rolled that money over, you can see that George was getting about a 9% return on investment, just cash on cash, which equates to $36,000 a year. Now, also, he had a mortgage on that. We'll get into that a little bit later, but that mortgage was earning principal reduction per year in the means of $7,000 a year. And on top of that, the property is appreciating at the average rate of inflation, 3.4%, let's just say. That equates to a $73,000 internal rate of return. Pretty powerful when you look at what it looked like before to what it looks like after. So let's get back to the basics here and talk about self-direction 101. What is self-direction? Well, really the difference between, let's say, having an IRA, an individual retirement account, versus a self-directed account is when you have an IRA, and that IRA is typically with Charles Schwab or Fidelity or a large company that might have a financial advisor that you know or don't know, and that advisor says, let's set up a retirement account. And typically he or she will say to you, would you like this to be high risk, low risk, or medium risk? Pick one of the three. Once you've picked one, then they might show you basically a menu of 5 different things to choose from, and you pick 3 out of those 5. And that's essentially what you're invested in until the day that you retire, unless you're smart enough to start taking that control over your retirement account, over your financial freedom in the future, and start rolling that into what is called a self-directed IRA, which essentially means that you're able to invest in many different things aside from just stocks, bonds, mutual funds. So what are the allowable investments inside of a self-directed IRA? Well, of course, you can own real estate, which is what Growth Equity does. You can own precious metals, notes and mortgages, or even private placements. So again, a truly self-directed IRA is essentially a marketing term that helps us differentiate the two, though. And one simple way to determine if it is or is not is if you were to go to your custodian, Charles Schwab or Fidelity, and ask them, could I purchase real estate inside of this account? If the answer is yes, then you probably do actually already have a self-directed account. More often than not, you don't, though. And so the answer to that will be no, you cannot. In which case, there are a number of different custodians in the space that is specifically what they do. So let's talk about the different types of self-directed plans. Essentially, there's two separate categories. There's tax-deferred and tax-free. With the tax-deferred account, essentially what happens is the money that you make that you contribute toward a retirement account does not get taxed until you take that money out. Tax-free is the opposite. It gets taxed on the way in, but everything that you grow inside of that account is actually tax-free. So to give you an example, if you were to put $100,000 into a tax-free Roth IRA, and that Roth IRA over time grew to $500,000 or $1 million, that extra money that you made would not be taxed. Now let's talk about something that's really powerful inside of the self-directed space, and that is the opportunity. A big part of what growth equity does is we're here to educate people on exactly how you can do this. And as this slide shows, right now about 96% of the industry is traditionally invested in a standard IRA, and only 4% is. Now, the real figure there is that it's because people aren't aware of it. And once people are educated to the fact that they can own real estate in it and that they can have a more stable asset that is earning a higher return, people are flocking towards that. So that's what we're here to do today. So there's essentially three different tax environments. There's taxable, tax-deferred, tax-free. And let's talk about the different things that you're not able to do. So essentially you can invest in pretty much anything that you want to with a few exceptions. You can't collect insurance, works of art, alcohol, stamps and coins, a few minor exceptions, but for the most part you're able to really take control of your own destiny. One of the great things about growth equity is the wealth of experience with those that work here. Between myself, the owners, and other individuals at the company, there's over 25 years of experience in all different aspects of real estate, whether it be development, brokerage, financing. We all come from different backgrounds and are able to use that to really put together a great business model here at Growth Equity Group. What does Growth Equity Group do? Essentially, what Growth Equity Group is able to do is, in this space, we can become everything for you. We evaluate markets for you. We are essentially the lender in the sense that we are sourcing non-recourse financing, which we'll get into in a minute. Essentially being your manager, where not only are we selling you the real estate, but we stay on and act as property managers, and you have the leverage of a manager who owns and operates over 1,000 properties, as opposed to you just owning one or two pieces of real estate. We're able to really capitalize on that economies of scale. We're also essentially your real estate partner. We can tell you, we identify the emerging markets. We can tell you when the best time to sell is, and there's a lot of different advantages to allowing us to handle and for it to be a truly passive investment for our investors. So a number of different things make this a great investment, but probably the two most important things are timing and knowledge. What we're able to do here at Growth Equity Group is use all of that experience and use our market research to identify the best markets to be in at one particular time. I come from a real estate rehabbing and commercial background. I've done hundreds of transactions and lease options, flips, cash flowing rental properties. And when I came on board, I was very impressed at the amount of due diligence that Growth Equity Group does before they decide to even enter a market and before they decide to purchase a number of investment properties for our investors. So, as I was saying, one of the things that Growth Equity Group does and has to do essentially inside of a self-directed account is manage that investment for you, because inside of a self-directed IRA, or of any IRA for that matter, you are not allowed to actively participate in the investment. Therefore, enter Growth Equity Group. What we do is we will stay on and essentially be the management company for you, where collecting everything, and it's really a hands-off, hands-free environment for our investors where you really don't have to be involved. Not to mention there is the GEG Manager portal where the client can log in and see exactly what's going on with their account. So, I'll give you a little bad analogy here. Real estate sometimes is like baking a cake, and there are different layers to that cake. The first layer, the base layer, is identifying what are the best markets to invest in. And Growth Equity Group essentially has 3 different markets that we like to invest in, those being emerging markets, college towns, urban markets, and sometimes there's actually some overlap on that. The next layer of the cake is the real estate market cycle. So, in addition to finding good markets, part of that is also making sure that you're identifying the right time to enter that market. For instance, if we're talking about Florida, Georgia, Texas, California, the right time to get into those markets would have been prior to now, 4 or 5 years ago, at the very bottom, essentially, of the bell curve, or before prices started spiking. Now is not necessarily a great time because of the fact that you're getting in at the height of the market. You're going to have less cash flow and also less opportunity for appreciation. So, one of the mantras that we believe in happens to be one of Warren Buffett, which says, be aggressive when others are fearful. So in other words, when people are somewhat saying still, let's go to Florida, let's go to Georgia, that market is typically already tapped out. And we're trying to identify new markets to be the pioneers at, also noticing market trends and deciding, okay, based on these things, we see major opportunity for growth. So another one of those market indicators is supply and demand. And one of the things that we're looking at is what is the absorption rate of that particular market. As this slide shows, you can see that we want to purchase real estate when there's only less than 6 months supply in that marketplace. Another thing that we're looking at is building permits. When those are starting to spike, that's another indicator that there's going to be less supply in the market and therefore higher demand. And with higher demand becomes higher rental prices and also appreciation over time. So let's take a look at what this overall investment looks like. When you're able to invest in real estate, you're getting the cash flow from the tenants paying the rent, essentially paying your mortgage. In addition to that, let's talk a little bit more about leverage right now. So one of the things that you're able to do with real estate that you're not otherwise able to do inside of a retirement account is leverage your dollar. Now, the only possible way to leverage your dollar inside of a retirement account is through non-recourse financing. Now, essentially what that means is it's asset-based lending, where you're able to get a loan without any credit check, no W-2s, no pay stubs, no tax returns, nothing, which is very nice. So for those investors out there who are already maxed out on their mortgages, or who may in the future want to elect to get traditional financing, you can still get this financing and it will not go against your credit whatsoever. So you've got the cash flow, you've got the leverage, you've got appreciation, and you've got diversification. What this is all about is if you have all of your eggs in one basket and you're not diversifying your portfolio, you're doing yourself a disservice. Because what happens when there's another tick in the stock market and you're just like George losing 25% of your portfolio? That is a big loss to take. And if you're able to diversify and take some of that risk away from that volatility, your overall portfolio is going to benefit. So let's take a look at cash versus leverage. So a number of our investors will come in the door with some traditional methods of investing and say, well, you know what, I don't like the financing. That sounds scary to me. Well, this slide demonstrates exactly what you can do with leverage in an account versus purchasing something all cash. So let's say, for instance, that you have $150,000 that you can use to invest. Well, essentially with the non-recourse financing, you can double the amount that you invest in. So as opposed to buying one property for $150,000, you can buy two, and you actually only, with some of our properties and the way the financing works, would only have to spend $100,000. So our $100,000 is going to generate $2,600 in rental income versus $1,300. You're going to get a mortgage of roughly $1,100 per month between, let's say, a couple properties, totaling $1,100, not separate. You've got your taxes, insurance, monthly management expense, maintenance. All of that gets you $740 cash flow, $8,800 in yearly net cash flow, plus principal reduction of roughly $3,100 per year, for an ROI of roughly 12% in comparison with 7.4%. So that leverage is very powerful and almost allows you to double the amount of money that you're making from a cash standpoint per year. And if you look at the internal rate of return as well, when you factor in the cash flow, the appreciation, and the principal reduction, 22% versus 10.8. It's kind of a no-brainer. You're going to take the way of leverage. Okay, folks, have we covered all the bases? We've talked about market time, interest rates, diversification, protection. You can read. Let's talk about the Port of Virginia. So there's essentially 3 different markets that we happen to be in right now. And I want to just briefly touch on each one of those and give you an idea of where we're at. So we've been investing heavily in Virginia right now for a number of different reasons. And that mainly has to do with the Panama Canal expansion, where they're actually widening that canal now, and post-Panamax ships are porting in the Port of Virginia, which is bringing a ton of jobs and business to the state. So for those reasons, we love Virginia itself and the Port of Virginia. A little bit more about the Panama Canal expansion there. So we've been buying. We're going to continue to buy there for as long as we can, as long as the timing's right. Now, we are, in fact, a nationwide real estate investment firm based out of Chicago, and it just so happens right now that we happen to have some inventory in Chicago because there were just such great deals that we couldn't turn it away, and it seemed to make a lot of sense based on the fact that it is, in fact, an urban market. And where these properties specifically are located, I'm not going to get too much into that, but where they're located is really on the upswing. So always great neighborhoods, great properties, great tenants. It makes for an easy leave-it investment strategy. The third market we happen to be in right now is Omaha, Nebraska. And Omaha is, a lot of people don't know about the Omaha market right now, and it's probably one of my favorites, if I had to say, because it reminds me of where I grew up, to be honest with you. You look around and there are fantastic schools, fantastic neighborhoods with pride of ownership. Everything is well kept, and it is just a fantastic, from a location standpoint and quality standpoint, is really going to be primed for some growth, I believe, based on market trends. And a few of those market trends that we happen to love are the fact that it's ranked number 2 best city right now in the nation to find a job. You've got Mutual of Omaha, ConAgra, and of course Warren Buffett, to name a few things about Omaha that you might recognize. Shifting gears here a little bit, I want to talk about one of the things that Growth Equity Group does that most anybody that I know of does not, which is the rental assurance program. One thing that we're offering is, if you have any vacancy for whatever reason in the first year, we're going to cover that vacancy and pay the rent for you. The reason for that is that it rarely ever happens. We tend to operate at about 97% occupancy at all times, managing over 1,000 properties. So that pretty much sums it up, guys. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I want to urge you to go online and download one of our ebooks. You can go to growthequitygroup.com and start to educate yourself a little bit more than we've had to just in this short period of time. And don't be afraid to call us or email us at any time. Again, we're here to help you learn about how you can diversify your retirement portfolio, and we're available at any time, 866-904-3336. And again, thank you very much for your time. And if there's anything I can do, please let us know.